All right, muscles. Let's dive in. We've got this physiology handout from Dr. Eldeeb. Should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic for sure.
So I've always wondered, like, holding a yoga pose versus, say, lifting weights, are those different kinds of muscle work?
You're totally on to something. There are different types of contractions. Isometric and isotonic are the main two.
Okay, so which one's the yoga pose then? Holding it all still and everything.
That'd be your isometric. Muscles are working, holding the position, but they're not changing length.
Ah, so no actual motion, but it still work, huh? Makes sense, because it sure burns sometimes.
Exactly. Then you've got isotonic, like that weightlifting you mentioned. That's where the muscle actually shortens.
Oh, so isotonic's like the muscles pulling against the weight, and that's how stuff moves.
Spot on. And that's how work gets done, moving things around. But the cool thing is, your body's using both types all the time.
Even just standing here.
You bet. Got to keep you upright somehow.
Makes sense. Now, what about strength? Why are some folks just naturally stronger? Is it all muscle size?
Size matters for sure, but there's more to it. The type of muscle fibers you've got is key.
Oh, like different muscles for different jobs.
Think of it like marathon runners versus, say, weightlifters. They're using their muscles in totally different ways.
So long distance versus short bursts of power, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Marathoners rely on these slow twitch fibers. They're all about endurance. Go for ages without getting tired.
And weightlifters are the opposite then.
They need those fast twitch fibers, super powerful, but they tire out quick. Like a cheetah, super fast, but only for a short sprint.
So knowing your muscle type could help you train better, right? Like focus on exercises for the fibers you want to use.
Absolutely. And speaking of training, that's where warming up comes in. Super important for those muscles.
I've always wondered, why is warming up so important? Feels like it's just taking time away from the real workout.
Think of it like this. Trying to bake a cake in a cold oven. Doesn't work so well, right? Your muscles need to be preheated too.
So it's more than just avoiding injuries.
It actually makes your muscles work better. Heat speeds up those chemical reactions that make the whole thing go.
Ah, so it's like oiling the gears.
Yeah.
Everything runs smoother when it's warmed up.
Precisely. And speaking of pushing those muscles, what about that feeling, that burn when you go too hard?
Oh, the dreaded burn.
Yeah.
What's going on there? Giving up on me or what?
That's fatigue setting in. Your body's hitting its limit. You've depleted your energy stores, need to refuel.
So I'm literally running out of gas.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, you've got lactic acid building up. That adds to the burn.
And that stuff's bad, right?
It gets a bad rep, but your body actually recycles it for fuel later. But yeah, fatigue's a whole bunch of factors. Even your nerves and muscles talking to each other gets messed up.
So it's like a triple whammy. No fuel, lactic acid, and my signals are all messed up. Poor muscles.
And there's more. This one's fascinating. The length of your muscle actually matters for how strong it can contract.
Really? Like if it's too stretched out or something? Yeah.
Exactly. It's called the Starling law. There's like a sweet spot for muscle length where it can generate the most force.
Like a rubber band, too loose or too tight, and it's not as powerful.
Perfect analogy. And then there's the load-velocity relationship. Ever notice how you can swing a feather really fast, but a heavy bowling ball is a different story?
Yeah, the heavier it is, the slower I go. So my muscles are working differently depending on the weight.
You got it. It all ties into how much force your muscles can generate and how fast they can contract.
Wow, so much to consider. We've covered a ton already.
We've only scratched the surface. But hey, next time we'll zoom in even further, see how a single muscle twitch happens.
All right, I'm ready for the microscopic world.
That's a wild ride.
All right, microscopic, let's do it. So we've got the big picture, but what's actually happening in there? At the cell level.
Oh, that's where it gets really wild. Zoom in on a single muscle fiber. It's like a cable, bundles of smaller wires inside.
Okay, I'm picturing it, lots of little wires bundled up. What are those called?
Those bundles are myofibrils. Those are the actual contracting units. And get this, they're made of even tinier protein filaments, actin and myosin.
So we're going smaller, muscle fiber to myofibril to these proteins. Are those the ones that actually doing the contracting?
You got it. Imagine them like two sets of interlocking threads. Actin's thin, like beads on a string, and myosin's thicker, with little heads sticking out.
Okay, I'm trying to picture that. Interlocked threads. So how does that make the muscle shorten?
When your muscle gets the signal, bam, those myosin heads grab the actin and pull, like a microscopic tug-of-war.
Oh, so it's like they're pulling the actin closer together, and that shortens the whole muscle.
That's the sliding filament theory, how muscles actually generate force. Pretty cool, huh?
Super cool. But how does the myosin know when to pull? What's giving it the orders?
Our good friend calcium steps in again. It's not just for those sustained contractions, it's the trigger for every single twitch.
Wait, so calcium's involved in every muscle movement.
Every one. Inside the muscle fiber, there's the storage network, the sarcoplasmic reticulum. That's where the calcium hangs
The
out.
little calcium warehouse is waiting for the call.
When a nerve signal hits, boom, calcium floodgates open. It rushes out into the muscle fiber.
So nerd signal, calcium release, then myosin starts pulling. It's like a chain reaction.
Exactly. And how calcium does it is pretty wild. It binds to another protein, troponin, which is stuck to the actin. That causes a shift in tropomyosin, which is blocking the myosin from grabbing on.
So it's like calcium moves this blocker out of the way, and then myosin's free to go pull.
Precisely. It's amazing, all these proteins working together like a perfectly choreographed dance.
Definitely a lot of moving parts in there.
Yeah.
But all this action, got to take energy, right? Muscles aren't just going to move for free.
Yes, I got to fuel those muscles. And the fuel of choice is ATP, adenosine triphosphate, energy currency of the cell.
Oh, ATP, I remember that from bio. Didn't realize it was so key for muscles, though.
Oh yeah, it's essential. ATP gives the myosin heads the power to detach from actin so they can grab again for the next pull.
So like recharging the battery so it can keep going.
Exactly. Without enough ATP, your muscles would basically seize up, one reason why you get fatigued.
So that's why I can only do so many reps before conking out.
Huh.
Makes sense.
Your body's struggling to make ATP fast enough to keep up with the demand. Now, how about this? How does the brain tell the muscles what to do in the first place?
Yeah, good question. We've got nerve signals, calcium release, but how does the message actually get from point A to point B?
That's where the nervous system steps in. Superstar messengers called motor neurons.
Motor neurons, those are the ones that carry messages, right?
They run from your brain and spinal cord out to all your muscles. Each one controls a group of muscle fibers, a motor unit.
So it's like brain gives the command, motor neuron relays it, and then the muscle fibers jump into action.
Perfect description. And the communication happens at a special spot called the neuromuscular junction.
Okay, so that's where the nerve meets the muscle. What happens there?
The nerve releases a neurotransmitter, acetylcholine. It's like a little chemical messenger.
Acetylcholine, that rings a bell. It does a lot of stuff in the body, right?
It's a busy molecule. In this case, it's the bridge between nerve and muscle. It binds to receptors on the muscle fiber, and that sets off the whole calcium release cascade we talked about.
So it's like acetylcholine flips the switch, calcium floods in, myosin starts pulling, muscle contracts.
It's a domino effect, and all happening in milliseconds. Pretty incredible, huh?
Mind-blowing, honestly. Now, what about muscle tone? Like, even when I'm relaxed, my muscles still feel firm. What's up with that?
Ah, that's muscle tone. And it's actually maintained by these low-level signals from your spinal cord, keeping things slightly activated.
So my muscles are never truly off. They're always getting some kind of signal, even when I'm not thinking about it.
Exactly. Always on standby, ready to go. Gives them their shape, helps with posture, and keeps you prepared for movement.
Makes sense. Now, we talked about those different fiber types, slow twitch and fast twitch. Is there more to that story?
There is. Remember the marathoners versus weightlifters? Well, within the fast twitch category, there are actually subtypes.
Oh, so it's not just the simple slow versus fast. There's even more nuance within the fast twitch fibers.
You got it. You've got type D, they're moderately fast, and use a mix of energy systems, good for things like sprinting or weightlifting.
So they're like the in-betweeners, good for both speed and endurance.
Precisely. Then you've got type N, the true speed demons, fastest and most powerful, but they tire out super quick.
So jumping, hitting a baseball, those are type Is in action.
Exactly. And the mix of these fibers, it varies from person to person. Genetics and training both play a role.
So if I'm more of an endurance person naturally, can I train to have more of those fast twitch fibers?
You can't totally change your genes, but training definitely affects the size, the metabolism, even the proportion of those fibers.
So I can't become a completely different athlete, but I can definitely work with what I've got and make it better.
Your body's amazing like that. Now, you were curious about muscle growth and repair, right? How do they get bigger, stronger? And what about that soreness after a workout?
Yeah, super curious. What's going on there at a cellular level?
It's fascinating. Muscle growth hypertrophy happens when those muscle fibers get bigger, making more contractile proteins, basically thicker and stronger.
So when I lift weights and feel that burn, I'm actually tearing those fibers a tiny bit, and then they rebuild stronger.
That's the gist. It's called microtrauma. Those tiny tears, they trigger a cascade of events that leads to muscle protein synthesis and growth.
So it's like breaking it down to build it back up, stronger than before.
And that soreness, that's DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. It's a sign of those micro tears and the inflammation as your body repairs them.
So sore muscles mean I'm getting stronger. I can live with that.
To a point, yeah. But too much soreness could be a sign of overtraining or injury. Always listen to your body.
Soreness good, pain bad. Got it. What about more serious stuff like strains or tears? How do those heal up?
That's actual damage to the muscle fibers or the tendons, the connections to the bone. The healing's similar to growth, but on a bigger scale.
So inflammation, scar tissue forms, new muscle fibers grow. Sounds kind of intense.
It is. And the time it takes, how well it heals, depends on how bad the injury was, your age, nutrition, all that good stuff.
So taking care of ourselves is important for muscle recovery too. Makes sense.
Absolutely. It's all connected. We've covered so much, from those tiny proteins to the whole nervous system. Pretty amazing stuff, right?
It's absolutely incredible. And we've busted some myths along the way too.
Always good to debunk those. But before we wrap up this muscle deep dive, there's one more area I think you'll find fascinating.
Oh, there's more. Lay it on me. What else is there to discover about these amazing muscles?
Well, we've been talking mostly about skeletal muscle, the kind you use for movement, but there are two other types in your body: smooth muscle and cardiac muscle. Welcome back.
Ready for more? Those other muscle types you were saying.
Yeah, so we've been focused on skeletal muscle, the kind you use to move around.
Right, lifting, running, all that good stuff.
But you've actually got two other types: smooth muscle and cardiac muscle. They're pretty different.
Oh yeah, I remember those names from way back. But a refresher would be great. What makes them different?
Think about where you find smooth muscle. It's in the walls of your organs, like your stomach, intestines, blood vessels, all that.
So it's doing the work inside, keeping things moving.
Exactly. It's called smooth because it doesn't have those stripes, the striations that skeletal muscle has.
So it's literally smoother looking.
Yep. And its job is different too. It handles involuntary movements. Like, you don't have to think about digesting your food, right?
Thank goodness for that. So smooth muscle's the unsung hero, doing all the work behind the scenes.
I like that. Now, cardiac muscle, that's even more specialized, only found in one place: your heart.
Right. The heart's a muscle too. Sometimes I forget that.
It's a vital one. And cardiac muscle is kind of like a hybrid. I got those striations like skeletal muscle, but it's involuntary too.
So it's got the power, but it runs on autopilot.
Exactly. It's built to contract constantly, rhythmically, keeping your blood flowing your whole life. Pretty incredible, huh?
Super impressive. Now, this makes me wonder, we've talked about how muscles work, but what about how well they work? Like, what makes some people better athletes than others?
The nature versus nurture debate. Muscle fiber type plays a role. We talked about how some folks are naturally more endurance-oriented.
Right, those slow twitch fibers built for marathons.
But it's not just the fiber type itself, it's also how efficiently you can use them. Plus your cardiovascular system, how well it delivers oxygen and nutrients to those muscles. And of course, skill, technique, that all comes from training.
So even if I wasn't born a marathon runner, I can still train to become a better runner.
Absolutely. Your body's incredibly adaptable. You can't change your genes, but you can definitely work with what you've got and improve.
That's good to hear. Now, I know there are a lot of myths out there about muscles, like that burning feeling during a workout. People blame lactic acid.
Ah, yes. Lactic acid, always the bad guy. It does build up during intense exercise, but your body actually recycles it, uses it as fuel later.
Wait, so lactic acid isn't making me sore?
The soreness, that delayed onset muscle soreness, that's more likely from those tiny muscle tears we talked about, and the inflammation as they heal.
So it's not the lactic acid itself, it's my body getting stronger.
Exactly. Another myth: stretching before exercise to prevent injuries.
Oh, wow. I've always been told to stretch. Is that not right?
Stretching's good for flexibility, but static stretching, holding the pose, might actually make you weaker right before exercise, even increase your risk of injury.
Seriously. So what should we do instead?
Dynamic stretching, moving your body through those ranges of motion, that's better for warming up, like a rehearsal for your workout.
So it's more about getting the muscles moving and ready for action than just holding a stretch.
Exactly. It's all about preparing your body for what's coming. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
Absolutely. From the big picture to the tiny details and busting myths along the way.
It's been a pleasure exploring the world of muscles with you.
And to our listener, thanks for joining us. We hope you've learned something new about how your incredible muscles work.
Your body's capable of amazing things. Keep learning, keep moving, and keep exploring.